Welcome back to the Boardroom Insights podcast. However, before we dive into today's episode, I want to acknowledge the very real and ongoing human suffering in Ukraine. Lives have been lost, communities disrupted, and so many continue to face daily hardship and danger. Our thoughts are with everyone impacted by the conflict. That said, today's conversation will focus on a different aspect, and that is business. We'll explore how Ukrainian companies, entrepreneurs and leaders are navigating extraordinary challenges, adapting, and in many cases continuing to operate and even grow. It's a testament, I believe, to the resilience, the innovation and the spirit of the people behind the business. And today I want to introduce you to a really good friend of mine, Dr. Gennady Polonsky. He's a management development consultant, a business mentor and a personal mentor, a speaker and a co-author of several books published around the world. He's also professor in Brunel University. But also his other claim to fame is that he shares or has shared the stage with lots of leading great management gurus and celebrities like Brian Tracy, Steve Wozniak from Apple, one of the founders of Apple, you'll remember, Arnold Schwarzenegger even, Marshall Goldsmith, John Maxwell, Alan Pease, and John Hoffman, and many, many others. Keith Ferrazzi from the author of Never Eat Alone. Gennady is a chancellor of one of the largest online live educational platforms called the Next MBA. That's nextmba.com, which is a virtual university for entrepreneurs which cover various one-year modules, and particularly they've got an amazing presence in many of the developing countries around the world. So look, over to you, Gennady. You're very, very welcome, and it's delighted to see you once again. How are you?
Thank you very much. Alan, pleasure really seeing you and pleasure talking to you now more or less formally. But every time when I hear introduction about myself, I always feel like, I have
You're
to
looking
turn
around.
back. Who is the hell is that he's talking about? Yes, I've been around. I've done some things. And obviously at my 68, I feel that the life just started.
Now, Gennady, we're not starting talking about numbers here now like this, are we? That put pressure on me straight away.
No.
But you look great for 68.
But what I want to say that it's like it's been life. It's was a short life, really. But at the same time, when you look back, then yes, there are some things which I'm ashamed of, and at the same time proud of. It's like everybody else.
But you're also enjoying your time with your young children, aren't you?
Yes, I have 4 children. I have grown-up children. My son is in the UK. He's going to be, he's going to be 45.
Oh, wow. You started when you were very young then, didn't you?
Yes, I was just, yes. And my daughter she lives in Vancouver. She is 35. And I have Daria, who is 12, and Alexandra, who is 11. Coming to
wonderful.
13 and 12. So it's like I'm a young father. All my friends, not like you, but about 30 years younger than myself.
Now, hold on a second. Very good. Listen, Gennady, I mean, I'm sure there's a great curiosity about what is life like on the ground. I mean, we're not talking politics here, just life. What's life like on the ground in Ukraine these days?
Yeah, well, my Ukraine is a choice. Some people say that, Gennady, are you nuts? I mean, you have opportunity to live really whenever you want, and especially my work at the moment is online, so I could be on Bali Island, yes, etc., or in Ireland even. So, but my wife is from Uzhgorod. It's a small town, Austro-Hungarian history. At the border with Slovakia and Hungary. So, and this place, first of all, it never had, how do you call when there is a shutdown at 11 o'clock in the night?
Curfew.
There was never a curfew. The only region in the whole Ukraine which didn't have it, and we never been bombed because of proximity to Slovakia and Hungary. That's my explanation.
So how many kilometers are you from Kyiv?
Well, from Kyiv, I'm further than from Vienna. So but it's about 800 kilometers.
Okay.
To Kyiv, and probably 400 to Vienna, maybe even less. I mean,
so you're closer to Vienna, right? Okay.
Yes,
And
but when you were describing situation in Ukraine, it's so mild because it's not just disruption community. There are 100,000 of people who suffered, and the death rate is about 2,000 a week. And the cities like Mariupol, for example, with the huge population of I think 300,000, they say 50,000 died. So it was really it's really a war, and it's so hard to understand when you cross the border to Slovakia, and everything is like okay. Or
life
when
is
I
normal.
travel to the UK, I have my phone and there is air raid siren, because I have to know whether my children are safe and when there is air raid. We have air
Right.
raid sirens like whole country, and so they have to go in the bomb shelter. And it seems to be like you sitting in a nice cafe, nice people, you drink coffee, and then and you realize
Really?
that yes, just there are bombs. I mean, we're blessed that we don't have bombs really, but
Yeah.
there are regions which 300 kilometers from us, and they're bombarded, and drones and all this rubbish and terrible.
Right. Right.
So yeah, but we came back because my wife has got relatives here, and it was incredible when we were crossing the border to Ukraine, and the millions, I think about 15 million Ukrainians left the country. There are different estimations from 11 million to 15 million who were
15.
moving out.
1.5 million.
Yes, one
Right.
five
Yeah. Yeah.
million of people. Can you imagine that? And people, it's not just moving. It's not like touristic things like with the luggage. No, no, no. It's people who lost houses, who lost everything. And in fact, what we were doing with my wife, with my family, we were meeting people at the train station. There were so-called evacuation trains. So trains which were running in the night because they were being afraid that
In darkness. Okay.
they
Yeah.
would be spotted and targeted. Yes. And in the wagon were supposed to be, I don't know, 30 people, 50 people. There were hundreds. And people were without possessions. So they were coming in the night to our train station, and we were picking up, women and children, and we were bringing to our house to have a wash and feed them. And then they were moving further down to Slovakia or Hungary or Germany. So it was really kind of, as I said, I recall this experience. It's still kind of, it was so fresh because it was really like in Tarantino movie or Oliver Stone, when you see the guys with the machine guns and the Red Cross and the crying children and silent parents. And one of the things, like a feature, when kids or parents have to leave their pets at the platform because they were not allowed into the
Oh,
train.
right.
It's teeny
Okay.
weeny thing, but it's traumatic for children. You have your
Absolutely.
dear pet, and especially your like English people like your pets and dogs and cats, and it's just terrible. And it was just teeny weeny, not important, feature of the war. And it's just and it's out of the blue because
Yeah.
nobody really expected it. And it's neighbors, and yes, there were some disagreements, agreements. 30% of Ukrainians have some relatives in Russia who were saying that no, it's propaganda, Ukrainian. You were not bombed. It's just propaganda. Because they were so brainwashed that they couldn't believe that all these atrocities. But we wanted to talk about economics. What I wanted to say that this terrible war, which is happening just in Europe, almost in the center of Europe, and in order to understand that fully, one has to really be here, and not even in Uzhgorod, but closer to the front line, where, as I said, every day I think 2,500 people die every week. Young people.
And
So it's
are you actually getting air raid sirens where you live?
yes,
You are, even though
all
you're
the
that
time.
far away.
All the time, because you
Right.
see, Ukraine is not that big, and maybe the anti-missile system not that sophisticated. Because when I was in Israel, even Israel way smaller than Ukraine, they had like sections. So one
Right.
section has got air raid, another doesn't.
Ah, I
But
see.
here it's the whole country, and very often rockets is moving one direction. Then, in order to disguise this anti-missile system, it turns and go somewhere else. For example, very often, and you can see now, technology, you can see maps, and these rockets, wow, going from Black Sea, from Russia, and they're going to Uzhgrad and to here, and then they're turning and then hitting somewhere else, away from us. But it's just to disguise, and to fool the system of the anti-missile. But first days we were sleeping, all of us, in the room without windows. And it's on the second floor. We have an area like corridor where we don't have windows, and all of us. And I was advising kids, like, you have to open your mouth if there is a blast, not to protect your these eardrums. So
right?
yeah,
Okay.
it's like, and it was so serious, because I saw this.
Kids shouldn't have to know about that.
Yeah, and then now you can see so many invalids, so many people without limbs, so many children. There was just competition somewhere, I think in France or Belgium, and Ukrainian lady, young girl, I think 13 or 14, without a leg on the pipe,
Dear.
and she was doing that.
Shocking.
I'm sorry.
Shocking.
Look, because I'm traumatized, because I see it. And when somebody, and just let me finish, when somebody is saying, Gennady, it's not that clear, especially you go to Austria and saying, no, we're neutral. Oh, the woman is being raped there, but we're neutral. Our principle is neutrality. And this is a crap, because I think evilness should be punished. And I do believe that liberal democracy, they created fantastic wealth and the way of living in Europe, but it's so weak. It turned out to be that it cannot withstand authoritarian regimes.
Right.
It cannot withstand this, because the procedure of making a decision is damn too slow, and you have to have a majority. And now this mass media distortion and internet noise, and you don't know whom to believe, whether it's a fake photo, etc., makes it absolutely difficult. It's only when you are here and when you see, and I'm doing kind of quite a lot of charity work, and when I go to this orphanage and the people tell me stories, and I know that they lost everything. Can you imagine? You live in the house and bam, there is nothing.
Wow.
And since it's not kind of wealthy country, so the how can I support of those families is very, very poor, if anything. So you can be given a room in some dormitory, but that's all, where you have like your father, mother, grandmother, children living in one room. So it's tough. And prices went up immediately for renting,
Of course.
because business, and some people using this opportunity to earn.
Right.
And that's kind of rational economic behavior, supply and demand.
Sure.
But it's obviously not, it's rational, but not morally, justifiable thing.
Well, Gennady, I mean, as I said at the start, I'm super sensitive to the realities of life on the ground and the impact, the terrible, terrible impact on the communities and on children and their future and their mindset and all of that. And I guess, though, I was keen to get a sense, because you're connected, you're touching in and out, and you know what's going on in the ground. And I'd like to just move a little bit onto the economics, because
yes,
there's, at the end of the day, whether we like it or not, money is essential to keep things turning. And I know there's all sorts of loans and gifts to the. Let's not go there. But on the ground, what's the economy? What shape is it in? What's life like for shops, for example? Which is to me, retail is a great barometer for what the economy is like in any country. So, what's the economy like?
Yeah, it's for me, it was interesting. I'm economist by background. I'm an institutional economist, and to be honest, when the whole thing happened, I was admiring Ukrainian resilience, because it's first time probably in Ukrainian history, or I don't know. I'm not Ukrainian. I'm Russian.
Yeah.
I was born in Kazakhstan in the Soviet Union, and I left in 1986. But I never lost touch with the former USSR, and some of my books and research are focused on there. But what I wanted to say, that people turn out to be very resilient, and businesses as well. And it's really amazing, because if you cafe, and it's kind of, I think it's human ability to adjust no matter what. And for me, one of the books which I've read it second time, and it's Say Yes to Life by Viktor Frankl.
Okay.
I strongly recommend it because it's really how you can survive in concentration camp during the Nazi
I see.
um,
Right.
period. And he, I think from that book there is a saying that optimists died the first, pessimists died as well, but those who were focusing on the moment, they survived.
Right, the here and
And
now.
really focusing on the very small horizon. And for a business, what kind of planning you can have in the country at war?
Hmm.
For even for half year, it's impossible because you don't know. Maybe this area could be occupied by Russians.
Yeah.
You never know. But still, business, the resilience of the business was amazing because people started making these horizons very, very short. And of course, the big business moved out. And a lot of stuff was relocated very fast to my part of the world, to my part of the country, because it was never bombed. And some pharmaceutical
Yeah.
companies, etc., moved here. Population
How can
doubled.
they? But how can they move? I mean, if they've got
Well,
plants in
yes. Well, that's they were moving. They were moving. They were moving.
lock, stock, and
And
barrel. Wow.
Yes, exactly. And but another thing which is what I discovered is that there is a lot of charity activity. And myself, I was doing a lot of like going to Hungary, unloading
Hmm.
trucks from UK and bringing, because they didn't have insurance to come to Ukraine, and no, and drivers didn't want even to come to
Of
Ukraine.
course.
So they were stopping at Slovakia border, and then we were bringing. And then if you calculate it in the monetary terms, like how much my hour cost, or
Yeah.
how much the truck would cost to
Yeah.
hire, and how that would be absolutely impossible to do anything. But because people were putting their time, money, their heart into that,
Hmm.
it was working, and it was amazingly working well. So there were not, job description, what you should do, a lot of common sense,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
a trust, which is, we believe, important part of any organization. Leadership was incredible. It was growing, and it was showing in the real life situations. And another thing what I discovered, and then I read some scientists papers on that when we give, we get the same kicks, we get the same
Ah,
excitement, the same
as
areas in
receiving.
our brain lights up
Mm,
when we get.
right.
And this is really, it's not really, sometimes charity is not about this in need,
Yeah.
but it's about ourselves. I
Sure.
feel
Sure.
great when I give, I give $100 to someone, and I know exactly where money goes, and I know what
Hmm.
was bought, etc., etc. And I get the gratitude, or even if I don't get gratitude, it's like it
Mm.
still feels, wow, I'm
You
not
feel
that
good that you
bad.
were able to do it. Mm.
Yes, and I'm able to. I'm blessed that I can afford it.
Sure.
Uh,
Sure. And
so
Gennady, I mean, in terms of on the ground supply chain, for example, which is an obvious um, thing that must be greatly disrupted. What's Are the shops full of stock, for example, or are they?
yes,
They
yeah,
really?
yeah,
So,
yeah, full of stock, and partly because of proximity to the border. That we can get stuff, from Hungary, from Slovakia is 1.5 kilometers from where I am now.
okay, right,
So this is really a situation which is slightly different than in, sort of mainland
further
in the
east.
center.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And do
Further
you
east.
have any idea what
Uh,
it is like further east? I mean,
Sorry?
do you have any idea what it is like further east in the country? I mean, in terms of supply chain disruption, are the shops? I'm focusing on shops here just to be basic for a second, but I mean that's where you're going to see things being impacted. Are are goods getting to the stores?
Yeah, but then it's complicated. Then it's complicated. First of all, there are quite, hundred thousands of people live at the near fighting zone, which is changing all the time. And then, of course, people drive there full of stuff, and they, of course, sell it at the premium. And that's, partly, some people do it because of, patriotic things, but majority do it
Mm,
because of, this charity thing died out a little bit because we You
Yeah,
cannot,
it's nearly 3 years now, isn't it?
yeah, it's real. So it's getting part of like background noise,
Yeah.
this war. But here, I mean, you'd be surprised. And when I bring my British friends, for example, who do a lot of good stuff, like a charity, and they walk along the embankment, and there is a river, and there is a coffee, there is a music, there are young people, etc. You feel like war? What war? And then there is
Really?
and
Oh,
then you read in the paper, so this place was hit and the child died or 5 people died, and it's like, and then you feel, yes, it's interesting that local people do not rush for shelter, and those
they're
who
getting
are
complacent, are they?
displaced, yeah, they feel, but now a lot of them kind of used to that there are no bombs. But before, it was really amazing. I saw a guy who jumped into this sort of ditch, I don't know,
Ditch, yeah.
ditch, yeah, when there was a raid siren, and people looked at him like he's a nutter because he just straight jumped.
Right.
And it was a gentleman, something like 40, 50 years old, and people start laughing, and then they realize that the guy was just traumatized. Then he was
Dear.
really experiencing these bombs, and another thing what happened is it's called, I think Jaspers, there is a philosopher, and the concept quite known, I think it's called trench solidarity. So a lot of businesses started to form communities, business communities.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah.
That's the
I
way the
cannot
world.
disconnect it. I cannot put airplane regime because of.
Don't worry. Don't worry.
But I've told all my relatives that don't call me.
So you're saying the collaboration between businesses on the ground?
Collaboration, incredible, and it's really like collaboration. People understand that they cannot survive on their own. And that's where trench solidarity, when you face common enemy, you become really, really close. And that's interesting that I do believe that when people are not well off, they're much closer together compared when they're well off. I never forget, I started my career in the UK in Newcastle upon Tyne Polytechnic with a relatively kind of proletariat population, and the level of closeness was much higher than when I moved to Buckinghamshire, where my neighbor was a NATO general, another was a famous surgery guy. So it's like when people really in need, they realize that they're social creatures,
Well,
and they have to stay together.
We had that during COVID too around the world, didn't we? Where that sense of community became very prevalent. And but tell me, but is there unemployment or is there full employment? Because obviously with the numbers being dropped by 15 million, and there's less people, and particularly males. I mean, what are your employment figures like?
To find a plumber cost me probably 3 times more than before.
Right.
Because a lot of people left the country. Some of the people, and it's almost 1 million people, they're military now. I think it's 900,000 Ukrainian army. Before the war, some people were saying that there were about 55 million of Ukrainians. Now they say if they have 30, it's great.
Really?
And 30, and then if you look at the age structure, then there are a lot of elderly people, because a lot of people are hiding. I can admit, and to be honest, I'm very much against Putin, Schmutin, all these terrible people. But and I'm in favor of winning the war and showing this and pushing them. But if I'd have a son who'd be living here, I probably would hide him. One thing is to be patriotic in general,
I know.
and another is sending your loved ones to the war when he can get killed next day. So a lot of people are left the country or hiding or fighting, and that's why the cost of labor really tripled. When if not more, especially this kind of basic things like, for example, in this part of the world, there is a lot of building constructions, flats and cottages and townhouses, because
still
a lot
going
of
on.
people. Yes, incredible. This is like, I cannot show you because I live in the woods, but there are a lot of these cranes, activities is incredible because a lot of people don't want to come back and there is no place to come back. 25% of territory is unlivable. It's like, because it's destroyed.
Right.
Really, like,
Right.
cities flattered. And they say demine the territories would take like 10 years or 30 years. Just so there is nothing for people to stay there, and they're scared. They don't want to be close to Russia, so they're moving here and they're buying flats,
Yeah.
buying houses and trying to. So there is a lot of construction going on,
Yeah.
but the price on labor, on this skill labor, like let's say put tiling or something, is really,
Really.
you
Yeah.
cannot find the people. I have some problem with my boiler, and it took me probably a month to find
somebody.
someone.
Really.
Yeah, and the guy came, like, he's like in 80s. He was doing
Wow,
he did a good job. But
And
it
tell me,
was,
I mean, so are you saying that business in general is still continuing on? People are still doing
yes,
business
yeah,
locally and internationally, trying to get above it and trying to just get on with life?
yes.
Because I mean, if you
That's
think about, so Gennady, if you think about COVID, how the whole world stopped, except for essential services, but the whole world had to stop for the duration. So, but at least if you were in your country and you had to stop, at least your trading partners were also stopped. So there was a level playing pitch.
yes,
But
disruption was enormous.
yeah, but in your case, your country is so negatively impacted, and yet you're saying that the wheels are still turning.
Yes, and in fact, in some areas, it's even faster. For example, there are, like, how can I say, not direct military, but something which is related to
Okay.
research and development. Everything goes into practice. These decisions are made way faster now, because time horizon is very short, and
Yeah.
unpredictability is high. So people work much more. I'm sure all businesses work really 24/7. But we have a supply, and we have, in fact, people even, really, as I said, they wanted to have a normal life regardless. And it's like one of the features of resilience that, screw them. They can
Yes.
throw their bombs. I still have my coffee in the morning. You know what I mean? And then there are really quite a lot of, like, how do you call this industry? Direct related to consumer. Of course, there are less things like buying fancy,
Luxury
Dolce
items.
Gabbana bags
Yeah,
or
sure,
something. Yeah,
sure.
but at the same time, it's still on.
Gennady, we're hearing a lot about rare earths and raw materials, that the country's rich in these amazing, valuable raw materials. Is that being talked about, or indeed has it been talked about on the ground? No.
No, in fact, nobody, according to some experts here on the ground, that the whole market is like at most 1 billion. Oh, I'm sorry, or something like, the figure much smaller than
Really?
what Trump was like negotiating. I think
Right.
it's just political rubbish. I think it's just something which
Okay.
is like, and they say it takes like years and years. It's the same like with the Arctic oil. They say it's not economically viable. It takes like generations to explore, and I don't know. But for me, it's still, for me, the whole thing, I think, became quite clear to me that it's business without morality. We knew that before. Without ethics, is just transaction, which is like, how can I say, which is downgrading humans.
Yes.
But business must have this, ethical things. It must be aimed at really bringing value to people, not just twisting arms, and so. And I think a lot of people, I personally would never ever change this 3 years of war in Ukraine for anything.
Why do you
I
say
learned
that?
about myself.
Okay.
Yeah. I know what resilience is. I met fantastic people in charity work. I know that there is a corruption. I never came across to any that there were stories at the beginning of the war that, let's say, 10 lorries were going to the front line and only 8 were reaching. The 2 were they destroyed, or, kind of crooks took it and sold it at the market. So
Okay.
yeah, there are a lot of stories that, yes, and I you know what, I don't have information about the corruption at the level of the government, and I don't know whether it's true or not. And like Buddhists say, instead of cursing the darkness, light your own candle. And I
Hmm.
have written and I light my own candle, and I'm
Hmm.
quite happy because I control my environment. I know there are good people, and I want to help.
Hmm.
And as for the rest, okay, well, no
Sure.
point if I cannot influence
So,
it. So
Gennady, you've referred to resilience at least 3, if not 4 times since we started chatting. What do you mean by that? Like, what does resilience mean to you?
resilience means that I think you stay what you are, your core things. You don't bend. For me, resilience is like no matter what, you
Hmm.
believe in humanity, you believe in business relations, you believe in things which normal people believe in. And for me, that's a resilience. So you do your life, and even that you go coffee, as I said, have coffee in the morning, it's in a way resilience. And I met really a lot of stuff and families, and getting married, and kids, being born, and it's for me that's a resilience.
So it's
Resilience.
not giving up, Gennady, isn't that it?
No,
Just
no,
not
no.
giving up.
Giving up, then what do you get? You've got nothing. Then you really defeated when you give
Hmm.
up. But it sounds very kind of how can I say a little bit. mm, how can I say it? A little bit pompousness, like resilience, but it's true. It's really true.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, resilience, and we cannot. I do believe that Ukrainians are strong people, and there were many occasions when I felt, "Damn, I'm not Ukrainian." I would like to be
Hmm.
Ukrainian.
Hmm.
I mean, there are a lot of bastards, of course, Ukrainians, who speak Ukrainian
Well,
and
they're
wear this.
everywhere, aren't they?
Yeah, they're crooks, and there are a lot of good people, and there are a lot of Russians who are in jails and left the country who are good people. I mean,
Hmm.
so I believe nationality, language, passport doesn't mean a thing. How
Hmm.
good you are, how bad you are. It's
Sure.
circumstantial very often. And so you have to, but for simplicity, yes, we used to say, and I used to say that all these Russians, and when I hear Russians speaking abroad, my stomach goes, because I
Really?
don't know whether they support bloody Putin or
Okay.
they're, and what we do normally with my children, they start singing Ukrainian songs. Da, 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 do, 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 do. And if people are from Ukraine, because a lot of Ukrainians speak Russian, they turn and there are hugs.
Ah, right. So
And if they move away
that's the
from you,
signal. That's the signal. Right, right.
then that's something is, yeah. So it's
Okay.
kind of.
Gennady, I want to take a break just for a moment. And when we come back, let's talk a bit more about resilience. And I'm curious to get your take from many of your friends. I mean, many of your friends who you have shared a stage with, and let's call them the management gurus, and which ones you really feel passionate about and believe in when they're talking about resilience or whatever else. So let's just come back after this. Today's episode is in partnership with Big Red Cloud, a leader in accounting software. So it's time to get rid of the Excel spreadsheets and switch over to smart accounting. So welcome back. Gennady, just before the break, we were chatting about resilience, and I know you facilitated a resilience conference some time ago. What was that all about?
Well, it was called Resilience Summit. To be honest, I was planning to raise like $1 million at least. I've contacted co-founder of Booking.com, Jeff Hoffman, and Jeff said, Gennady, I will take part in that if you give me a guarantee that you are going to raise like $500,000 at least. And I said, sure, because the course is so great, and it's like, it
Yeah.
goes to, displaced children, etc., etc. And I contacted, I think, 12 people who took part. And I contacted very dear friend of mine for last 25 years, Brian Tracy. Brian
Yes.
Tracy is my mentor. In
Mm-hmm.
fact, I'm going to talk to him today at 8 o'clock in the evening. And I know the family well, I know his children. And he said, Gennady, of course, I will do that. And then I contacted Meredith Powell from the United States. And then I contacted Scott Friedman. And then I contacted Joe Vitale. By the way, Joe Vitale, there's a movie. Oh, let me boast a little bit. And it's a movie which was called Zero Limits.
Yes, you told me about
And I
this.
am
Yeah.
executive producer of that movie. And
Very
I'm
good.
featured in the film. And they came to Ukraine and filmed my house and my wife. We were playing chess. I mean, they were filming like for a day, and there is probably like 3 minutes. 2 minutes. I'm in the film.
What's the
So
film
it's like,
about?
well, it's about zero limits. That if we believe that there are no limits, there are no limits. It's not metaphysical stuff. I do believe in that. Because a lot of stuff we put our own constraints in our heads that we
Based on
cannot
past
do that.
experiences and so on. Yeah.
Exactly, based on past experience. However, if it comes to, I don't know, health of your child, I mean, there are no limits. I do at most. If they say you walk on your fours to nearby Slovakia and beg, I said, sure. When? Now? Okay. Because it's important. And there are no really, yeah. So it's mindset. And Joe Vitale, who is a believer in that, and very good friend of mine as well. I was traveling with him. He taught me how to smoke a cigar. First time in my life I did it. I loved it. I was sick afterwards, but
Of
I
course you
felt
are.
like much wealthier when you smoke this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And talk
But
about resilience and talking too about belief in yourself. I know you're very heavily involved. You're the chancellor of the next MBA, should I say. Tell us about that, because you're doing that particularly for developing countries. It's a business arrangement, but at the same time, it's focused on developing countries, I understand.
Not really. Not only
Okay.
developing countries, because I have about 25-30% English speaking, native English speaking countries. So it's like UK, United States.
Right.
In fact, during the last probably 30 years, I've never worked for anybody else. I was independent consultant. I was picking up my own projects. I don't want to get salary. Salary is a drug. Like from
Sure.
good, and they say good is the enemy of excellent or something. So like getting small money and people tied up to that, and they don't like the boss, they don't like the work, but they're getting money. And that's what, I didn't like that. But this time I took, well, probably it's already 1.5 years. I took an offer and became a chancellor of educational platform called indeed Next MBA. And it's live. Everything is live, no pre-recorded. Everything is live. And I have people like James Clear, for example, who was talking recently, Atomic Habits. Then I had this Snowden guy, American defector,
Yes.
talking about cybersecurity.
He's living in Russia now, isn't he?
I think he's living in Russia, but I kind of asked him because he never said anything political. He never praised, Putin's regime. So he is like neutral. He's Americans deprived him of his citizenship. And according to the story, he was going to Latin America, and he was in Sheremetyevo airport in Moscow, and when they deprived him of his, so he and Russians immediately gave him some indefinite leave to remain. So, but he's a fantastic guy, and he's really it's amazing. If I mention, for example, now CIA, most likely our talk goes somewhere else. And it's true. And it's like there are systems which listen and then pick up some words and phrases and combinations.
So you and I are right now being listened to in Langley. Is that what you're saying, in Virginia?
Not straight away, but according to the guy, and he knows definitely more than you and me, that this conversation is going automatically selected by some AI.
Right.
And then
certain keywords.
If there are more features like we mentioned, CIA twice or 3 times or 4 times, then it goes to the special, and then it's analyzed by people. But the whole thing is done by machine,
right?
With big data machines, and it's really scary because, in fact, they can affect even now they can affect our life. You go to the bank, and the bank clerk saying, "No, the system doesn't allow you." Allow me to give you a credit. So it's system, decides. And now it's more and more of that. So it's really great.
Yeah.
But it's not about them, but about my and I took this offer and become a chancellor, and I loved it because, yes, I believe in democratization of education. I do believe that Harvard is wonderful, Stanford is great, Yale is fantastic, but the cost. And
perhaps that's where I picked up in the developing countries. I got that wrong. So it's that you're trying to democratize education, so make it available to all.
And it's just naturally these countries like Asia.
Yeah.
I have fantastic people from Vietnam and Singapore, and Singapore is exception, but there are quite a lot of
Philippines. You mentioned,
yeah. And the cost is very small. I think it's like probably $300 for a year for all courses. We have business, applied business, marketing, AI, and Mastermind. And
Yeah.
Mastermind I'm having together with Brian Tracy, but Brian Tracy is leading sort of, and we have Phil Kotler, who is
Yes.
supervising marketing. So it's really big names, and
Yeah. I mean,
Marshall Goldsmith and some other
he's the
people.
king of marketing, isn't he? Philip Kotler.
Oh,
Wasn't
he's
he?
93 now.
93.
93.
Gosh.
And trust me, if I
That's
would be as sharp as he
really
is, as agile as he is at 93, hallelujah. Really,
amazing.
he is incredible. He is a really thinker, and he gives spot on comments.
Mm,
And because it's live,
yeah.
students are given a chance to ask questions.
Hmm.
And can you imagine to ask questions from His Royal Highness Phil
Absolutely.
Kotler or
Absolutely.
Brian Tracy? And it's like amazing. And people
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
oh, it's
So
amazing.
talking about
That's
His Royal Highness, you were telling me a story about one of the royal family who you were personally mentoring. Who
Oh
was that?
yes. Well, I mean,
Prince?
it's a bit kind of mentoring royal family. No, but the story is, in fact, he gave me a lesson himself. Imagine it was, I think, 2000 and something. It was very hot in London, very very
Hmm.
hot, and I was through Lord Bridge, one of the uh, one of these guys close to the royal house. He said, Gennady, you have such a vast experience. You know West, you know East, you know
Yeah.
Russia. I've arranged a meeting with His Royal Highness Prince Michael. It's free of charge, of course. I said, of course,
Okay.
I should pay for that.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was very hot, and I left my car at the Amishan train station, like normally do, and I put it on the hood in the car, and I left. And then I realized that I've forgotten my jacket, and my tie, in fact. And then I thought, well, okay, well, jacket, no jacket. They don't want my jacket; they want me.
Do you want you?
And then I came to some Hilton, from where we took a taxi and went to Kensington Gardens and to the palace, Kensington Palace. And
Hmm.
there are, police and all these bobbies. And I felt like a big shot because they were like, I was in the car. And then the guy, this chap who arranged the meeting, he said, "Where is your jacket?" I said, "I've forgotten it in the car." He
No
said, "What?
way.
What?" He said,
Gosh.
"Disrespect, you sort of bloody Russian, you disrespect, it's
No.
His Royal Highness." And I said, "Look," and I was scared. I said, "Let's go to Selfridge and I get one and then I give it back. I don't like the color," something like that.
Oh dear.
I tried this trick a couple of times in America. And the more expensive store, the more they give you,
Gosh, I've got many Selfridges friends who will be listening to this, so they will not want to hear that. But anyway,
Yeah, I know,
carry
I'm
on,
sorry. So
Gennady.
you can cut it. You can cut it off. But anyway, so I came to this Kensington, and Nicholas 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 Chance was the
Mm,
secretary. I never
hmm.
forget that. For me, it's like one of highlights of my career. And we were around the table, and I was like feeling really crappy. I felt, oh gosh, I forgot my jacket. And then Prince Michael came, dressed nicely, and I said, "Let me start with the saying that I'm made terrible mistake. I forgot my jacket, and it's not sign of disrespect of royal family and
Hmm.
you. No, no." And
Hmm.
he looked at me and said, "No big deal." And he took his jacket off and he took his
Ah,
tie.
he mirrored you. Good for him. Good for
Can you
him.
imagine? And I
Yeah.
looked at this guy who brought me and said, "You see how this
Yeah.
noble family behaved?
There you go.
And for me,
There you
that
go.
was a lesson which
Yeah, yeah.
he
It
gave
it
me actually.
it brings me on to maybe just the other thing I want to talk to you about as perhaps to close up here, Gennady, and that's leadership. So, what's your take on leadership, and who do you admire as a great leader?
Well, there are many people, and I used to like, I have a big collection of biographies of many,
Hmm.
many people, and from Steve Jobs to now, I'd like to read this. I've forgotten Isaac, this famous bibliographer, written another book which I don't have. But for me, one of the great leaders, and again, I don't want to bring the war, but I think it's Zelensky. You know,
Okay.
Zelensky. He
Okay.
was former comedian and not a great one. And he was okay, but
Right.
and
Well,
then
Trump would agree
really,
with that one. Mm.
yeah. But can you imagine that during this terrible ordeal and the war,
Hmm.
and definitely, and he was, now it's known that Americans were offering him, to take him out of the country, etc. But he stood strong, and with the, and I think this is incredible. He changed. If you look at the picture of this young lad who used to, laugh a lot and amuse the audience, and now you see this guy. It's completely. It's like
He's so
he aged
presidential.
probably
Yeah.
like yeah. And when somebody is accusing him that he doesn't wear a suit, I have some words which I don't want to use on
Well,
air
it's a bit like
because
your
it's rather.
story. It's a bit like your story
Yeah,
with the
exactly.
Prince
That's
Michael
it.
Kent.
Exactly. And that shows the personality level,
Yeah,
of one guy and another guy. So it's for
sure.
me, it's just
And how is Zelensky perceived on the ground in Ukraine? Whatever we might think over here, how is he perceived in country?
well, mixed, and that's why what I like about Ukrainian society. There is really,
It's democratic.
democratic. Yes, democratic, and some people say, "Oh, it's turned into totalitarian." No, it's not. And one thing which is not democratic is when they are looking for people who, must go to the war,
hmm
and they are hiding. And sometimes you can see ugly scenes. I've never seen it. I saw it only on YouTube when they're picking up young lads, or not that young lads, and putting them into their cars and then bringing them to these military points, and where they cannot go
Well, they
back.
wouldn't be the
And
first country to do that. I mean, conscription has been around for a long
yeah,
time. So,
conscription. Yes, that's right. And for me, in fact, I used to like Winston Churchill. Well, I still love him, and I love the movie, and I've read biography and several biographies actually. I think he was a great guy. He was like, I don't give a toss person. He knew what he wants to do, and how he done
yeah,
it, and especially during the war. And I think really to test the leadership, one has to have crises. I mean,
yes,
there is no point
yes.
in being, glorifying
When
something
everything is
if
good.
you never live through hardship, if you never live through these
Sure,
terrible things. Yeah.
sure.
So, and in fact, all our development as a human beings goes through pain.
hmm
We don't know how good we are unless we go into some really bottom, or we put in a situation when you have to make a
You're
decision
tested.
to take this money or to be honest. It's really, and it's not an easy choice very often, but once we do it, then we feel really good about ourselves.
Sure. Gennady, when you
Yeah.
look back over your amazing career and all of the amazing people you've
Oh.
interacted with and touched and so on, if you had a magic wand and you could change something about the past to make it better, what would it be?
Well, I think like a lot of old people are saying that I would be more bold. You know
Right?
what? I was bold enough to write to let's say Milton Friedman, for example, Nobel Prize winner. I've read his book Free to Choose. He written that book with the Rose Friedman, his wife, and I
Right.
didn't like it. Well, half of it I didn't understand, and I was living in Czechoslovakia at that time. And I've written to him a letter straight away. I said, Milton, I think you are wrong. So, and
Did
he
you
said,
really?
what? And I have, I can show you, there is a letter from him on my wall, and he sent me books. He said, Gennady, no, I think you are wrong. And then he sent me his books,
Amazing.
and I started looking into this monetary theory, Chicago boys, etc. And then I went to Stanford, and I thought, well, I'm going to see him. I came to the lady, and she was like big black secretary, and she said, "No, I'm not allowing you to enter." I said, "Look, I came from Czechoslovakia. It's a long way, and I want to talk to Milton because he knows me." And she said, "Okay, I'll find out." And she said, "Okay, you have 5 minutes." And I came to see Milton, and we spent like an hour and a half. We went to Stanford canteen, and we were discussing and talking. And from that time, I thought, well, then all these big guys are humans.
They're human.
They're accessible.
Yeah, much more
And
approachable
if they're
than you
not
think.
accessible, sorry?
Much more approachable than we realize.
Approachable,
Accessible,
because good people are human people.
Yes.
And they know that, and Milton knew that he is not great. He's got a lot of, things he wanted to change in himself. He was humble, and he was great because of that. And then I started being more kind of entrepreneurial. And if I like someone, or, I remember I've written to John Maxwell. I said, John, I'd like to have a dinner with you. And he said, what?
Did you
Or
really?
his secretary, who the hell are you?
Yeah.
And then, I managed to get hold of him, and then I brought him to Russia and Ukraine, and we had some speaking engagements. And I remember I was, because he was so expensive, and I didn't want anybody else to translate him, to interpret him during one event in Tatarstan. And there were like I think probably 100,000 people. It was like this how do you call skiing arena, huge venue, and I was interpreting for him, and I've realized what a great speaker is about. When he can hold a pause for like 3 minutes, and it was like incredible. And I was interpreting,
That's
and I thought, well,
confidence.
I said, John, they're going to throw eggs at us. Don't do that. Because he was showing the power of consistency. And the story was about the woodcutter who comes in the morning to the tree and picks up this axe and then does 1, 2, 3, leaves an axe, goes back, to his house. Next day, he comes to the tree, picks up his axe, 1, 2, 3, goes back. And he was like repeating like 15 times. And I said, look, yeah, we've got the point. Yes, stop it. And he was doing that, and the audience started boo. I mean, they paid big bucks, to listen to this kind of. But then I've realized that it's in this consistency, repetitiveness. That's where the tsimis, that's where the message, that no matter how boring. He showed it on the example itself. You know what I mean? To say not that like, okay, you have to do it like several times. No. That wouldn't get the meaning. But when you repeat it like that, and you really, he's a great speaker. I think one of the best I've ever met.
Wow. Amazing. Well, Gennady, I'm just curious now, how do you spend your free time? Because with that schedule, by the way, I'm not quite sure if you get any free time, but I'm sure you do get a little. What do you do?
Well, I mean, unfortunately, it's true that I should spend more time with my daughters. The problem is that they are moving into these teenager years. And before I thought I know everything about bringing kids. I know everything, but there were different kids. We didn't have
different times.
Phone. Yeah. And here, very independent, very cocky, that I know what I'm doing, and it's for me it's tough. It's like lessons I have to go. And I said that our development goes through pain, so I'm having quite a lot of it. And you know what my morning mantra, that in case of the crisis with my daughters, how I behave like loving, calm, wise father. Loving, calm, wise father. And I repeat that. It's affirmations.
Very good.
When the situation arises, of course I don't behave like wise, calm, and
no, but you're
loving.
You're trying
like
to
a jerk.
You're that constant, the positive affirmation is what you're saying. You're getting into the mindset.
Yes, mindset. And I do sport, and I do believe that you have to have strong legs. And I know Peter Diamandis. There's a guy who is quite known in longevity area. And some people, he is superficial, but he's got something like which can, according to him, predict how long you're going to live. Let's say your grip when you shake hand, how long you can hang on the pole, how many times you can do pull-ups,
Oh
how many you can do push-ups, how much time you can hold your breath when exhaled fully. And there are some interesting stuff. So I'm trying to do that because I want to live.
Are you doing things to try and improve all of those statistics? Really? Gosh.
Yes. I do believe, and that's what I'm teaching, and I do believe that we have to become better, even in our mind, every single day.
Right.
Every single day. Right. We have to do something different, because otherwise you get this routine, and you wake up and it seems one day looks like another, and this is not good, because all these days will become one, and then you feel that you don't live, you just have one day. And I do believe learning another language, learning something, for me it's a sport. I'm really fanatic a little bit, and I swim. Today I was swimming. Today I've done my record. I did. It's very humble. I did 2 kilometers for 1 hour and 17 seconds. 17 minutes.
Gosh.
So which is like for swimmers, like, but for me,
that's a big deal.
It was good.
Yeah. Wow. Well, it's better than mine, I can tell you that. Gennady, let's leave it there. It's been a real pleasure talking to you and hearing your stories and hearing about life on the ground. I'm sure many of our listeners will be really, really enthralled to hear your take of life on the ground. Leaving out the politics, just the reality of life on the ground. It's highly, highly disturbing. And I wish you well and your family well, and of course all of your fellow countrymen, your adopted countrymen, I should say.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Alan.
Gennady. Okay.
I appreciate that you invited me. For me, it's a pleasure talking to you. I think you are one of the people who are conscientious, who is kind, intelligent, open-hearted, and that's one of the people. I think we're the same in this regard.
Mm-hmm. Well,
I do believe that's why we connect so easily.
It's nice of you to say it. Thank you, Gennady. Talk soon.
Thank you very much. Okay. God bless. Bye-bye.
Are you ready to take your business to the next level? Introducing the CARA 7 Plus Index, the ultimate organisation health assessment. This is built on solid research. The assessment delivers clear insights, data and benchmarks on what truly drives success. The CARA 7 steps to profit are common sense. But here's the reality. Common sense isn't always common practice. Leaders know what they should do, but their best intentions often get diluted before reaching the front line and eventually your customers. That's where the CARA 7 Plus Index comes in, because it cuts through the noise, identifies priorities, and gives you the proof and stimulus to act with confidence. This isn't just another survey. It's a game-changing tool, blending cutting-edge AI, robust research, and expert consulting, all to turn insights into action. So, no more guesswork, just clarity and results. Please visit 7plusindex.com to start your journey to better business health today. Thank you very much for listening, and please do hit the subscribe button or leave a review wherever you're listening to this podcast. Thank you.